experience of my sophomore year, just learning to play at that level. And then in my junior year, I got better and better, and then I ended up being a honorable mention All-American, and then I ended up being a first-team All-American in my senior year. And I attribute this, my coach in high school was Dave Roberts. He was playing at Johns Hopkins. He had this Zen mind frame that he placed in me about working hard. After my junior year in college, I decided that I wanted to be the best, and so I decided to work harder than anyone else in achieving that goal. And that's when I started doing work beyond, the normal practice work afterwards, and in the off season, working like I'd never worked before. And because I put a vision into place, if I was going to be on the field playing lacrosse, that I wanted to be the best.
Welcome to the Fred Opie Show, where we learn how to make a difference on and off the field. I'm your host, Fred Opie, a former Syracuse University and U.S. national team athlete, now historian. I use the oral histories of my guests to help you figure out what your gifts are, find the right school to develop them, and give you a plan to give, save, and spend your money and time wisely. I grew up in the Hudson Valley, about 30 minutes south of United States Military Academy at West Point. I was a West Point lacrosse junkie when I started playing lacrosse in 8th grade, and just about everything I knew about college lacrosse came from watching those games. As a senior in high school, I had the opportunity to see Sid Abernethy play. He was an attackman for the U.S. Naval Academy, and it was the Army-Navy game at West Point. Many people may not know, but Sid is the second African-American to make first-team All-American after Jim Brown.
My parents were living in Westminster, Maryland at the time, 1958. Then we moved to Annapolis, Maryland in 1960. We started playing lacrosse 10 years later in 1970. High school had junior high. We had track and lacrosse in the spring, and that was it. So I didn't want to be a track guy, so I decided to go down the lacrosse path. And the interesting thing was that it didn't have a junior varsity. They had one team. And so I was playing against kids that were faster and older than I was in junior high, and that I think that helped me a lot. But anyway, from school, then I went to Annapolis High, and the older Annapolis High School, and I played soccer and lacrosse there. And so that was the combination: soccer in the fall, took a break in the winter, and then lacrosse in the spring.
So I interviewed Jeff Long man, just the other day, and he told me something that I didn't know about, that your brother played on the Naval Academy before you, Tommy.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah. He's class of 78. Yeah.
So he told me that him and Tommy used to have some battles on the field. And, battles back and forth. Yes, I used to, and of course I knew a lot about some of the team players because my brother was on the team before I got there. It was Washington and Lee All-American named Lee Curry, who was a defenseman, and he was the one who really started the program at Key School. So we started playing at about the same time. And Tom was a defenseman, and of course I was an attackman. But and then he went on to Annapolis High and played there, and then he went to the Naval Academy and played there. So I always followed him on the lacrosse team. Where did you go on official visits when you were a high school student?
I went up to West Point, pretty much it. And I went up to West Point because my brother was going up there. He wanted to go to school there, and it didn't work out for him. And then got accepted at the Naval Academy. But I went when he was in the 11th grade. I was in 9th grade. I went up to West Point just because they let me go up on the visit with him. And that's when I decided it was too gray up there. It's far back in the woods. I guess in the context of recruiting and how things looked at that time, I wasn't that highly recruited. I ended up getting an appointment at West Point, and I had an appointment at the Naval Academy, and a full ride at Yale. Decided that that the world didn't need another lawyer, so I went the Navy route, and Navy had the best
So when you ended up going to the Naval Academy, what was the transition like for you in terms of academics and lacrosse?
I started out as an aerospace engineer when I got there, and quickly realized that I wasn't going to be able to do that and play lacrosse at the same time because it's just too intense. So everyone ends up with a Bachelor of Science from the Naval Academy just because of the amount of engineering you take, regardless of the curriculum that you choose for your major studies. And academically, it was a big challenge. The military requirements, the academic requirements, the long days, plus plus adding on the varsity sport, and to really put everything in the right perspective and plan your time wisely with fall ball and winter preparation and the spring season. You basically had to play lacrosse year round in order to compete and be a starter. It was really, really interesting that I always found that my grades were better during lacrosse season when I had less time than they were in the off season.
It comes down to time management, that
Right.
when you have that extra time on your hands, you think
Right.
you have more time to do stuff versus when you're in season, you're like, I better get this done now while I can if I want to get some sleep.
Yeah. Challenge for me was I actually was on the bench on the varsity for my freshman year, so I considered that a victory because I didn't get to play that much, but I had 3 All-American attackmen ahead of me. So Mike Buzzle, Brendan Steck, and Mike Hannon. It's called Mike Hannon Toad. And Toad was a traditional Greece attackman, not like the attackman they have today. He was not. He didn't have the ball that much. He could just shoot. He got him the ball in the middle. He could score. And Mike Buzzle they were sophomores, and I was freshman. Right, and then Mike Hannon was also an All-American. He was a junior at that time, so he had 1 more year to play. Mike Buzzle and Brendan Steck had 2 more years to play, and I was behind them on the bench. It just so happened that after my freshman year, Brendan Steck decided to go to hockey. I went from sitting on the bench as a freshman to starting as a sophomore. So, I mean, that was just fortuitous because it looked kind of bleak.
Mike Buzzle and Brendan Schneck. Let's start with Mike first. What did you pick up from his game that you incorporated into your game?
Mike Buzzle actually played with a wooden stick for the first 2 years at Navy, and then he probably went to a plastic stick. But he was playing with a wooden stick when other people were playing with the lighter stick heads. And that's just he had such skill as an attackman that he was able to play at a level above everyone else with a wooden stick, which was amazing. So when he started playing with the plastic stick, he was even better. You got to remember now, I grew up in Annapolis, watching Navy, going to all the Navy games, watching Maryland beat Navy consistently, from 1970 through almost 1980. And so what was very interesting was that I learned, a sense of vision and how to play. From Mike Buzzle, how his sense of vision brought just, his greatness to the game. He was able to dodge, 2 to 3 people at once and still have, the vision to either, score or assist.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think was most interesting about that whole experience with Mike Buzzle was that when I arrived in my junior year and we were playing Maryland, now again, my emphasis in history is watching Maryland beat Navy teams for as long as I can remember. But we went to Maryland in my junior year when Mike Buzzle was a senior, and we beat Maryland in a great game, and we also beat them my senior year, but we beat them in my junior year. And what we did was we put Mike Buzzle on the crease, and there's another attacker named Dickie Wayman and myself. That's when we really solidified as teammates, as Dickie Wayman and myself, when Slaza and decided to put Mike Buzzle on the crease, and he let Dickie Wayman and myself go wild behind the cage and just keep running and pressuring, and that totally surprised Maryland because they were ready for Mike Buzzle's game, and Mike is a very talented player. I mean, I just used to sit and on the other side of the cage and watch him and just watch him make certain moves and just say, he's not going to get out of that one. He's not going to get out of that one. And he would. He was an incredibly talented player. However, Mike wasn't too happy that he got put on the crease for that game. We beat Maryland. And that's because we started moving the ball at incredible pace and a lot faster than the Maryland guys ever expected. And, and we won the game.
What you learned from Brendan Schnepp?
He had what I called the step. That was that people thought he was slower than he really was. He just had the feel sense, the toughness. Mike was more of a finesse player. Mike Puzzle was more of a finesse player, moving, dodging, getting out of the way. Brendan would take the hit to hip and shoot the ball on the run and score. It was the right move by Hopkins when he arrived there in his sophomore year. In his junior year, for them to put him at midfield. He played attack the whole time as an eight. And I don't think the Navy coaches even thought about putting him in midfield, but he was a prolific player at Hopkins.
Please email me at fdopie@gmail.com and share your questions. I will repeat them on the show so people get the benefit of your question and my response. Invite me to speak and host the Fred Opie Show at your school, club team, or camp by emailing me at fdopie@gmail.com. Hosting a show is a great way for the older students who are interviewed to pass on positive peer pressure to younger students. And during the Q&A with the audience, I share a perspective I wish I had when I was younger. Now back to the show.
What attributes make someone the best?
The experience of my sophomore year, just learning to play at that level. And then in my junior year, I got better and better with Mike Buzzell and I working a lot better together. And then I ended up being a honorable mention All-American my junior year. And then I ended up being a first-team All-American in my senior year. And I attribute this to my coach in high school was Dave Roberts. He was played at Johns Hopkins. He was an All-American. I learned more from him as far as playing the game. He had this Zen mind frame that he placed in me about working hard. For some unknown reason, after my junior year in college, I decided that I wanted to be the best, and so I decided to work harder than anyone else in achieving that goal. And that's when I started doing work beyond the normal practice work afterwards, and in the off season working like I've never worked before. And because I put a vision into place that if I was going to be on the field playing lacrosse, that I wanted to be the best. Doing extra sprint work, time on the wall, recognizing, okay, what are the elements of this game that help you be the best you can be? One is being in the best shape possible, and having rock solid six pack, and just like doing everything you can do to increase your strength and your speed. Well, I already had some of the speed already, so it was increasing my strength, my upper body strength. Two, it was working also with my teammates, because we began to understand that we would take what the defense gave us. We wouldn't start running specific plays, regardless of what the defense was doing. And it's an offensive mindset. It's the counter to the counter.
Start with your gift. Understand and monetize it while serving others with it. This is my latest book. Here's what people are saying about it. I like the comparison of your life's journey to that of overhauling and realigning your car. This is a great read. Maura Rodino, parent of a high school student athlete. Your book is a modern-day primer on how to be successful and live more abundantly. Joe Edel Sr., father of former Division I student athletes. Read a sample chapter of Start With Your Gift on my website, fredopie.com. Welcome back to this edition of The Fred Opie Show, unpacking history to positively impact the future.
There's a whole mental games going on between the goalie and the attackman. And a lot of times goalies, because of some unknown tell, will guess correctly. And Federico had that down to a science.
Tell me about the second team All-American that year was Jose Oliverio from Army. Why was he so good?
I think his thing was the angles. He cut off angles. He would come out pretty far. and almost attack you.
Bob Henry, who first team All-American, Defenseman of the Year. Why was Bob so good?
Once he checked you, you knew that he was there. Waited for him to check me really hard, and then I would just spin off that. His strength was his decision to check you, but that was also his weakness, because once he checked, he was committed. And if you survived that check, he gave everything to that check, and then he couldn't get his body back in position.
Tommy Sears.
I was known as a pretty strong right-handed player, and no one really even saw much of my left hand. And in my junior year, in the playoff game against North Carolina, we lost. Had 4 goals, and the extra man on the left side was my left hand. Tommy came up to me and said, kind of like in one of the timeouts or something, he said, "You're not supposed to be able to do that." Terry Smith was my offensive coach, gave the same remark. He said, "Where's that been all year?" He was a great enough goalie to allow you to score enough, but not enough to win.
Hey, listeners, we want to make you aware of the Jim Brown 56 Lacrosse Challenge. Donate $56 or more to the Uganda Lacrosse Foundation at ugandalacrosse.org. 56 was Brown's Syracuse lacrosse jersey number. Purchase a copy of my lacrosse memoir/career advice book, Start With Your Gift. Post a picture of you holding your copy of the book on Instagram and tag me, and I will donate 10% of the proceeds of your purchase to the Uganda Lacrosse Foundation. It will advance the initiative of getting lacrosse into the Olympics. For that to happen, lacrosse has to exist on all the continents on the globe, and Africa is the last frontier. Your tax-free donation will go a long ways in helping spread lacrosse from not just being the fastest game in the United States, but the fastest growing game across the world.
If you could have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, who would you have dinner with, and why would you choose that individual?
Colin Kaepernick. The reason why I want to sit down and talk to him about his decision to start the kneeling, to bring attention to plight in the underserved community, especially the African Americans, battles that have been going on between African Americans and police as part of the societal challenge. I would sit down and talk to him, say to him, my 26 years of military service, as I see it, was designed to actually create the environment where if he wants to silently protest something that he feels that's wrong in society, he has the right to do so, and that's why we have a military, and that's why we're out there, protecting this country, because so that people can exercise their rights and their God-given rights in this country.
Number 2,
Colin Powell, because I was in Desert Shield and Desert Storm when Colin Powell was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And he and the generals during that time frame were determined to right the wrongs from Vietnam, bring back a real victory, a decisive victory for this country, because they were junior officers in Vietnam. No real say as to strategy and policy. They were out in the field. They were trying to stay alive. And I'd love to sit down with him and have a discussion from a historical standpoint of what his perspective was at the time and is now in relation to bringing the victory on the battlefield in a quick fashion against Saddam Hussein and the Iraqi military.
And your third dinner guest, who would you have?
Jim Brown. I'd like to sit down and talk to him about his experience at Syracuse. I'd just like to have a discussion so that he's aware that I followed him as a first-team All-American. Think about how many brothers have been first-team All-Americans, Kyle Harrison and others, but it's a pretty elite group. So I'd love to sit down and talk the game over with him, have him hear my perspective and hear his perspective. Love to hear some of his stories.
When is the last time that you cried, and why?
I was at my father's funeral. He died 10 years ago. The thing about life is that when you see one of your parents laid out in front of you in a church, you come to a sense of your own mortality. You realize, I'm not going to be here forever. It made me come to tears, and otherwise I generally am not. Most military guys, you kind of find out that we're kind of hardened by being in the fire somewhere and doing things that other people only don't do. So not much else in my life has motivated me to tears, but that did.
So here's my final question. Sum up the totality of everything you've learned about having a positive impact on the world around you, And I'd like you to make a video right now for us in your mind of 3 things that you would share in that video, and it'll be played at your memorial service in your absence. So you'll be laid out, and you're going to, in that video, people are going to be watching, reflecting on the life of Sid Abernethy. What are 3 ways that people need to live if they're going to have an impact on the world around them that you would share in that video played at your memorial service?
Share that part of the game that I'm aware of that will maybe help them, inspire them to be, better players down the road. The other would be, service to country, and how much you gain from being in a culture of service and thinking about others before yourself. If the movie could be made, them saying, hey, I saw Sid Abernethy play, and that's why I picked up a stick. If I hadn't seen him play, it wouldn't have been possible for me. I wouldn't even have picked up a stick. How many people were inspired to pick up a stick by what I did on the field and how well I tried to represent the sport.
Thank you for your service to the country. Number 2, I was one of those young kids watching you play. Again, this is the time in the game where you didn't see a lot of black and brown folks playing our game. So here it is, you're on attack, and defending, and the goal is a Hispanic brother, Jose Oliverio. I don't think people necessarily understand what it's like to grow up in a sport where you don't see you. Amputees taking up the game of lacrosse, wheelchair lacrosse. You have people who are being role models, and it's so important. And for me, you definitely were that. It was almost like when I saw you play, I said to myself, I can do that. And that is so important. I'd say similarly, I'm named after Frederick Douglass. I'll never forget when my mother gave me the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, and this is a time when I'm struggling academically because of a learning disability. And I see this man who it was illegal for him to learn how to read and write. And he did it anyhow in the midst of servitude. And it said to me, I have no more reasons, learning disability or not, that I cannot strive and have success academically. So thank you for your example. Thank you for taking the time to share your lacrosse journey. Thank you, Sid, for joining us.
Hey, certainly. Thank you. I appreciate it.
If you are joining us for the first time, you can go on my Facebook page and you can listen to the many interviews that we've done. I started doing the Facebook Live as a way of recording my guests, sharing the long form with the audience, because if you listen to the podcast, you're only getting the smaller part. The podcast, if you want to go to our archive, it's at fredopie.com and look for the link to the podcast. There's also a link, the book Start With Your Gift, which is my lacrosse memoir. That's a wrap for this show. Thanks for listening. To hear more content like it, go to fredopie.com. If you have questions about advertising and sponsoring this show, contact us at fdopie@gmail.com. That's fdopie@gmail.com. Write me to speak, teach, and consult at fdopie@gmail.com. That's fdopie@gmail.com.